do musically?
Well, I mean, music is all about communication, and you do need a partner sometimes to really um, facilitate that, or take it to another level. I mean,
Hmm.
even just songwriting, many of my songs are written with collaborators. Lots of the songs that I've released have guest artists, bringing in their own flavor as a collaboration. I mean, every night when you're on stage with your band, even if you're playing your music, that's also a collaboration, because we're all talking through music, and then the audience becomes part of the collaboration, and that's the sort of this three-way conversation I feel like that is going on, and that's what I love about music. I'm not the most verbal person, generally speaking, in a group of people talking. I'm often very quiet or reserved. But when I've got my horn in my hand and it's music, it opens me up and allows me to connect with other people.
Hmm.
And collaboration on a professional level is also just part of that process, part of the joy of being able to make music.
Yeah, but also even going a little deeper, in jazz especially, we interact with the community daily, and at least on, in some of the more hardcore circles, there isn't as much of an open-mindedness about sharing the stage or even a song, or like feeling like there's, oh, I'm in this camp over here, I'm a diehard fan of, straight head swing or this or that. But to see, you on stage with Kenny Garrett and George Duke and all of these top level artists, I mean, I think that's something that's important for young audiences to understand, that there was none of these sort of invisible barriers there between you. I didn't, everyone can have their own personal opinions, but you guys approached it for the music's sake first. So was there any sort of that vibe, or how did you guys create such an open vibe with each other?
Well, I think there was a mutual respect just amongst all the musicians. I mean, we were all part of the Warner Brothers Records family at the
Mm.
time. But I think all of those cats, I mean, specifically Kenny Garrett, everyone thinks of him more as a, modern, straight ahead kind of cat. But he had actually made a contemporary record right before that. And he was trying to cross over into the world that I had been living in a little bit, and even worked with Paul Brown, I believe, on a track. And I think that someone like him, first of all, he's a really nice cat. And I think, a lot of musicians are much more able to appreciate other cats coming from different genres or styles of playing, and just appreciate them just on a technical level. Someone like Kenny Garrett can look at me and say, "Gee, I really respect those records that you're making," or the tone of my saxophone or my phrasing or things like that that sometimes other critics might not see. They might lump it into oh, that's a certain
Hmm.
kind of music that I just don't like that kind of music, so I'm not going to engage on that level.
Hmm.
And I don't really often get that from a lot of musicians, professional musicians, who might look at it in a different way. And um, I mean, it was really a thrill for me, of course, to be hanging out with George Duke and Larry Carlton
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
Bob James, and Kirk Whalum, Rick Braun, and I had all known each other for a number of years, and so we were very sort of friendly. But it was a wonderful night, really, and a fond memory. That was my first time ever actually at the Montreal Jazz Festival, anyway. So there. But I find, generally speaking, amongst most of the musicians I know, that I don't find a lot of those barriers that you might find out there in the critic media world. I mean,
Hmm.
I'm not really sure. I try not to engage too much on that level in terms of thinking about music.
Well, I mean, maybe it's just the community of people that you bring around yourself. Obviously, that you want to associate with people who are like-minded and open-minded as yourself, and we encounter these perspectives, and we welcome all
Sure.
perspectives on our channel. So that's where I see sort of sometimes opinions about classifications of music, or certain things that, when I'm seeing it from a certain vantage point, I realize, and I see artists and the top artists in the world almost behave as if these things don't exist.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I
yeah.
think it's really interesting just in music, and jazz music particularly. There's often there's sort of very rigid barriers a lot of people try and throw up. And I remember Nate Chinen, a great
Mhm.
reviewer, wrote a pretty positive review of one of my records, and there were some comments on the review that I happened to gaze upon. And they were like, how can you be so positive? He said, "Hey, I mean, I just really respect the guy's craft for doing what he does.
Mhm.
His music might not be my cup of tea, but he's doing it really well." And I thought that was a pretty valid way to look at things. I mean, it's you don't find that like in films. I mean, people can look at like a popcorn film and say that was a really awesome popcorn film,
Right.
and no one's looking at it and saying that's not an art film, that so consequently it's not good. But I think that does happen in the jazz world unfortunately sometimes. And I've sort of tried to bow out of those arguments for just for my own sanity.
Well, I keep doing that because believe me, when I'm caught in some of those, I have to do the same. But